Hey everyone, Spidey here for Cameron over at CBM Reviews, and today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. I'll be right back because it's a lot hotter than it looks.
Spider-Man Homecoming was directed by John Watts and it starred Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, Alyssa Milano, and Robert Downey Jr. Before I continue, I'd like to thank all my subscribers for clicking that little button down there, and if you want to be just like my subscribers and get that thank you too, go ahead and subscribe. And if you definitely don't want to miss all the content I create, click that little bell icon so you'll be notified of everything that I post. Anyway, back to the review. The story happens after the events of Captain America Civil War, where Peter Parker now has the suit that Tony Stark created for him in that movie. He is going around doing little small things, being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Due to being in the right place at the right time, he comes across an arms deal with a very dangerous weapon, and he does some more digging. These guys are making weapons based on stolen technology, specifically alien technology. He tries to tell Tony Stark about it, but he feels like he's being brushed off, and he becomes involved in a little too close of a call. Tony takes the suit back and he has to go off on his own to try and stop these arms deals from happening. He finds out that the person behind all this happens to be the father of the girl that he has a crush on, and so he makes the tough decision, goes after him, and stops him. Tony Stark gives him back the suit, and that's the story in a very quick nutshell. And normally this is the point where I tell you whether I liked it or I didn't like it. And I'll tell you, at first, I thought it was okay. At first I thought that it was fine. It was much better than The Amazings. And then I watched it again. And then I watched it a third time. Just to make sure that okay is properly, that okay was a good adjective to use. And I was wrong. This is the best Spider-Man of all time. And I hate saying that because Spider-Man 2 holds a near and dear place to my heart. But the Peter Parker is done excellently. This is the Peter Parker that if you read the comics, you grew up on. And this is the Spider-Man that we've all wanted for the longest time. This is the best Spider-Man that we've seen, no doubt. And this is a Peter Parker that is true to the comic book origins. The movie's done great. You get to see the teen angst, you get to see the unsureness, you get to see a realistic representation of what Spider-Man should be. Tom Holland, pitch perfect through every single point. Even when he's feeling himself and he has to be knocked down a peg, he is that Peter Parker that you know, and he also is an accurate representation of what a teenager has grown up to be. And even though he never says it throughout this movie, and he didn't say it through Civil War, that old adage rings true in all of his actions. This still is not one of my favorite comic book movies, but after watching it and giving it a fair shot, and understanding that I did have a bias to previous Spider-Man entries, this is probably the best made Spider-Man movie that we've gotten to date. Still not my favorite. I have emotional ties to one in particular. But there it is. Let's talk about some of the characters. I've already talked about Peter Parker. Let's talk about the villain. Let's talk about Adrian Toomes. Now, Marvel has a villain problem. Adrian Toomes, who is the Vulture in this, is not part of the problem. He is one of the most engaging, one of the most charismatic, and one of the most understandably driven villains that Marvel has produced. Is he the best? No, not in my opinion. He's not the best. There are two villains that beat him. The Vulture is a great villain. I love the scene in the car when they're heading to Homecoming, and he has the dad talk, and he just pretty much lays it out. It's like, I know who you are. Don't you ever get in my way. I will kill you and everyone you care about. We also have Alyssa Milano playing the role of Aunt May. This is not your dad's Aunt May. This is yeah. I mean, she's not my type to say totally, but still. I mean, yeah, that's Aunt May. She's well done. She's very caring. She is stern when she needs to be, and I like that about this Aunt May, but she's not Rosemary Harris Aunt May, and that's the Aunt May that I grew up with. But this is a new age. This is a new Aunt May, and I actually do like what they did with Aunt May. She's not afraid to say whatever she, needs to say, but she also can make jokes, and she's more of an aunt age, and I like that about her. So now I'm about to be controversial again and talk about the thing that I don't like, and that's Tony Stark. Yeah, I'm going there. I didn't like Tony Stark in this, but it's not that I didn't like Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal is great as always, and the thing I don't like about it is actually story based. In this, we see Tony talking about taking responsibility for making Peter a better version of himself. But I see a very hands-off approach. So this is not on Robert Downey Jr. This is on the story writers. Having Tony be a deadbeat dad of sorts, because he's trying to be a father figure to Peter, but he's hardly ever around and only shows up whenever Peter's in dire straits. And that's even if he actually does show up. I mean, if his suit shows up, but he's not there in the suit, did he really show up? Maybe. But the fact of the matter that he really doesn't show a presence until at the very end, and then at that point Peter's like, no, I kind of handled this on my own and I'll just stay low to the ground right now, shows the maturity of Peter and how maybe Tony sees the error of his ways by putting this all on Happy. Happy Hogan's the foster parent. And even then, he acts like he doesn't want the kid. So those were my issues with Tony and Happy. But otherwise, the movie is great. I liked it a lot more after later viewings. And it's definitely a must-see, even if it doesn't give anything to the Infinity War story. You should definitely check it out. It's a go watch this movie. Lay it right now.
I really liked Spider-Man Homecoming. It was a really good movie. It was better than all the other Spider-Man movies. And my least favorite character is Vulture because, of course, he's the bad guy. And my favorite scene is when Spider-Man saves the people in the elevator because it was cool. You should watch it.
What would happen if you, say, crossed a radioactive spider with a John Hughes movie? Well, you would get Spider-Man Homecoming. The cool thing about this movie is that it's got the clearest sense of identity out of maybe any MCU movie other than the Guardians of the Galaxy films. It knows exactly what it is, exactly what it wants to be, and what it wants to do, and it achieves all of those things. You've got a solid director, John Watts, who was already in line to make some sort of a teen or coming-of-age movie, so he was already in the mindset for something like this. Next up, you've got a great cast. Tom Holland absolutely knocks it out of the park as Spider-Man. The guy's energy, his enthusiasm, everything about him is just perfect for the character. Because Tobey was right for the movies he was in, Garfield was a good Spider-Man, maybe not a great Peter Parker, he was also almost 30 when he was doing those, but this is the first time we've had a Spidey that I feel like really fires on all cylinders, and it's all thanks to Holland. He did most of his own stunts. He's great in the costume, out of the costume, just fantastic all around. Spectacular even. Next up we have our villain, Michael Keaton, who plays Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture. Now, this is easily one of the more memorable villains in the MCU because he is such a compelling character. Toomes didn't set out to be the bad guy. Instead, he was a construction foreman working on site cleanup after the Battle of New York. Well, Tony Stark's new company, Damage Control, comes in, puts him out of business. So he turns to crime, selling salvaged weapons from these different superhero battles on the black market. And why is he doing it? Is it because he wants to get back at Tony Stark? Nope. Does he want to take over the city? No. Take over the world? Nuh-uh. He wants to take care of his family. Right off the bat, we have a relatable and understandable villain. But he's still not a good guy. He's not completely sympathetic, but in a good way. Keaton is so mesmerizingly sinister in this role that you cannot take your eyes off the screen, because he's good husband, good dad one minute, and just casually reaching back across the seat to talk to Peter with a gun in his hand the next. Let's take a look at some of the supporting characters. Ned steals every scene that he's in. He and Holland have such great chemistry, and you're going to hear me say that a lot because everybody in this cast has great chemistry with each other. The coolest thing that has happened to him in his life so far is finding out his best friend is Spider-Man, and watching him try to deal with that is just, it's wonderful. Next up, you've got Marissa Tomei, who is just a blast as Aunt May. She's not in there any more than she needs to be. She's not in there any less than she needs to be. And when she's on screen, she's great. She and Peter, it's so much fun to watch the two of them interact. You really believe that she cares for this kid, that she's raised him as a son, but that she's still kind of out of her depth, but willing to do whatever she can to help him. And wrapping it up, we've got Robert Downey Jr. At this point, Tony Stark really is kind of the beating heart at the core of the MCU, and everything that's happened feeds into his performance here. He's trying to be better as a kind of a father figure to Peter, even if it seems almost reluctantly, than how his dad was with him. You know, he wants to do right by the kid. We've got a great tough love moment. Spider-Man thinks that it's just an Iron Man suit lecturing him. And then boom, suit opens up and there's Tony Stark, who has come in person to dress this kid down. And you're just going, oh, all right, so stakes are there, we get real. About the only thing I really didn't care for in the movie was the lack of consequences. It seemed like Peter used the Stark internship as an excuse one too many times. I get that you can only do so much within the time that you have. You know, if we had seen too many social consequences, it would have kind of derailed the film, taken us off on a different tangent. And believe me, I know about going off on tangents. Maybe my favorite thing about this movie, and about most of the MCU movies, is the attention to detail. You know, Adrian Toomes could be hanging out with anybody. No, he's hanging out with the Tinkerer and the Shocker. Just getting to see them on screen, even if they're not wearing their comic book costumes, which is probably better for the Shocker, is a blast. The guy that Spider-Man is interrogating in the car garage, you know, yeah, you deserve that. You're a bad guy, you're a criminal. You deserve that. The guy he is meeting with, the one that said he had a nephew in the area, Miles Morales. They found a way to work Miles Morales into Spider-Man Homecoming. If you haven't seen this movie, definitely check it out. It's a solid recommend. All the performances in it are great. Writing is great, humor is great, action is great. Great job, Marvel. Great job, John Watts. Great job, Tom Holland. Oh, fantastic job, Michael Keaton. Just wonderful movie top to bottom. Highly recommended.
We got two. We got two left. Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther. If you want to send in reviews for either, send them to comicbookquizbowl@gmail.com. And remember, Black Panther is going to be a special episode because I've given my spoiler and non-spoiler review. I just give an introduction and the rest is all you. So that's it for Spider-Man Homecoming. Did I fall a little too hard for your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? You tell me in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And if you're new here, subscribe. Share this video with all your friends. And as always, this is Cameron with CBM Reviews. We'll see you next time.